Welcome to our third and final tutorial on Premiere Pro, and in so many ways this is the most fun one because we're doing finish work, polish work, and we're going to learn how to export the project for the world to see. So more specifically, we're going to talk about transitions, how to make transitions between clips, pacing, the importance of pacing through the whole piece, adding textual elements if we feel like we want to do that, and then finally exactly how to export the project so that we can share it. Okay, so let's jump right in. So this is the project that I'm working with. We're making video poems, and I'm just going to play it through for you to show you what I have. It's a minute long, won't take long, and then we'll talk about what I'm looking at in terms of finish work and polish work from here. So here we go. The whiskey stink of rot has settled in the garden, and a burst of fruit flies rises when I touch the dying tomato plants. Still, the claws of tiny yellow blossoms flail in the air as I pull the vines up by the roots and toss them in the compost. It feels cruel. Something in me isn't ready to let go of summer so easily, to destroy what I've carefully cultivated all these months. Those pale flowers might still have time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village as they pulled the flax, songs so old and so tied to the season that the very sound seemed to turn the weather. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this work so far. Um, so how would I work on just polishing it up? So one of the things, the first thing I would look at are, well, let's talk about pacing first. And rhythm, I guess, is another way of looking at it. So there's a couple things that kind of struck me as a little um, kind of like in this shot, which I like very much. You can see that that little thing there where it's kind of in the haze of the sun and it just goes away and then the shot goes, that feels weird, right? So this is kind of one of the things we talk about when we talk about pacing and rhythm. Like it wouldn't take much to just adjust that, right? So how would I do that? So we've got this little guy that's going to help me zoom in super close. And I'm just going to go to the moment where that happens, which is right about there. So I'm going to grab it at the end, and I'm just going to pull it in so that we don't get that. And now I'm going to pull the clip over to there, and now I'm going to widen back out, find the beginning of the clip, and this would be the easiest fix, so let's see if that works. See, that's fine. So it's little things like that that would give us just a sort of little off feeling, you know, when we watch it, and you as the person who controls the images, you have the sensitivity and the ability to not make those little off things happen. In the air, as I pull the vines up by the roots and toss them in the compost. So that little, it seems to me that little, so here's a cool little control guy here. Like if I hover my mouse right over that transition point, and if I hit Control on a PC or Command on a Mac, you get that thing where the arrows point both ways. And then I'm going to click on that and I can roll it, and it's going to roll that transition point, and you can see both right there. But what I really am looking for is like, it's that transition moment, and toss them in the compost. Yeah, and then that one's too short. So I would actually take a few moments to work on what's going on there just to make it rhythmically flow well. So I don't really feel like I want to take all that time right now. But you get the idea. It's kind of related to the words, related to the flow of the clips, and you just want to line things up, pretty well. And you also want, what I have already done is I made clips switch when there were pauses in the words. That was pretty easy to do. But now it's the finer tuning of that. So what I did is I made this clip way too short, and I got it closer to where I want, where my beautiful wife is throwing that in the compost heap when the words throwing it in the compost heap happened, but I created other problems. So it's going to take a little while to smooth that out. So now, more substantially, here's the big turn of the poem. So easily to destroy what I've carefully cultivated all these months. So this is where the poet stops talking specifically about the gardener and this specific garden. Those pale flowers might still have time to fruit. Correction, this is where she stops talking about that. My great-grandmother said, and this is where she makes a big turn to talking about the great-grandmother and a time far, far away. So this is the turn of the poem. And so now I want to talk about transitions, right? So the easiest transition, the transition that replicates the way that we see the world, how our eyes work, is the jump cut. Just put one image right next to another. Most of your transition should be that transition. But here, it doesn't feel right. It's not indicating what a huge turn this is in the poem. Also, I'm not sold on the owl, by the way. Yeah. What I'd love is my shot with the bees and the Russian sage, but that turned out to be a corrupted file. So again, if I weren't doing the tutorial, I'd be out there reshooting that shot because it's a lovely, warm, sunny day and there's bees in the sage right now. So what are my options? Well, so you have the jump cut. The second most common transition is called a dissolve. So let me show you how to do a dissolve, right? So it's such a common transition that there's a shortcut for it. So I'm going to click right on that transition, and I'm going to press the Control or Command key and D. Okay? So highlight the transition point you want to make, Control or Command and D, and you've created a dissolve. And that makes a dissolve. And you can, and again, this is handy in this case, you can come in closer. You can hover your mouse within the dissolve, and you see that little, how that icon changes, and you can make your dissolve bigger, right? And my great-grandmother sang with the girl. So dissolve is the second most common transition to the jump cut. But I don't actually think the dissolve is right for this turn. It's too big of a turn. So I'm going to right-click inside that, and I'm going to clear it. What I actually feel like I need, okay, and I'm hitting Control or Command, and I'm putting a dot there and another dot, and then I'm going to the next clip, and I'm going dot and dot. I actually feel like I have to, now I'm going to pull the dot closest to the transition down, and the dot closest to the transition down. I actually feel like I need a fade to black here. Time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang, right? And if I want it to be a longer transition, I can pull the dot into the clip over. So let's listen to these with a little more context. Those pale flowers might still have time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village as they... Now here's a place where I actually might like the dissolve. If I'm going to keep the owl, it will be because I like this dissolve. If I don't like this dissolve, the owl is going to be history. I'd still have time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village as they pulled the flax. Let me make it even bigger, just for fun. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village as they pulled the flax. Songs so old and so tired. I kind of like the idea of that transition. I like how haunting it is. I just think the owl's actually a little goofy for that. So I would definitely find another image. But that's an idea of how you can use a transition in an interesting way. I would be judicious. If you're gonna have a dramatic transition, I would have one or two. I would not have more than that because then it starts to look cliche or hokey. Okay, so we've talked about transitions. We've talked about rhythm, and so the next thing we want to talk about is text. Let me show you how I'm going to use text on mine. I just want to begin by having a title, having the title of the poem. Okay, so I've already selected an image for the title, and it's been over here the whole time in my preview window. So just that tomato. So I'm going to click and drag this over to the beginning of my project. So, and I'm going to show you another trick. So I just want the image, so I don't want the whole thing. So I'm going to just take that image and I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to hover it right over this first image here. And once again, either Command or Control, I'm going to press down. And you see these little arrows there? That means it's going to push the whole rest of the project over, like that. Okay? So now I have just this in the beginning with no audio underneath it. And so, so I want to put the title of the poem there. And so, see this T thing? It's the type tool. I'm going to click on that. And now if I click anywhere in this window, it's going to open my text box. Okay? And my poem is called September Tomatoes. So, so I can control this font. Things I can control things. I could just that's default. I find it not an attractive font particularly, so I can block this. And if I just go over here to Essential Graphics and click that, you may need to like click September Tomatoes to make sure that's what you're working on. I do not like Tahoma. That's the default. And you can scroll here if you work on this kind of multimedia stuff. At some point you're going to have to learn about fonts. I'm just going to go with why don't I just go with Georgia? It's one that I know is tried and true, and I like it. You know what else I like better? Actually, I'm going to go Garamond. It's a little bit old world, and because of that ending. So, and it's a little bit elegant. So I have Garamond. I can make it bold if I want to. I think I like that. Yeah. And what I can do is I can put, because the white might get a little bit lost there, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a stroke around it. That'll put a black, well, right now it's putting a white line around the outside of the letters, but I'm going to click on this box here, which is about the color of the strokes. And I'm just going to click in the middle here, and I'm going to use my wheel or my mouse to go to the upper left corner, which is black, right there. And I'm going to say, okay. All right. And this here is going to center it for me. It's going to tell me I want it centered horizontally, and I want it centered vertically. So now I'm just going to click down here in my timeline, and I might tweak it a little bit, but I kind of like that. I'm going to go with that a little bit. If I want to move it, I could move it right here. I could go to the pointer tool, and I can just take that, and I can move it up or down. Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to put it right on the tomato. That's what I'm going to do. Once again, I can go there. All right, and I can see that I can move that over. Okay, let's run this. The whiskey stink of rot. I might play with that a little. So I certainly want it to be done by the time that clip is over. So here's one last thing I'm going to do to really smooth things out. It's not nice when things just boom start, right? It's nice when they fade in a little bit. So once again, Controller Command. Going to make my little buttons here, and I'm going to fade this in and out. And this one I'm going to fade in. I'm not sure if I have to fade it out. The whiskey stink of rot has settled. If I did fade it out, I would have to fade this one in. So it's just about tweaking. You'll notice also that I faded my voice in, because that too would be jumpy. All of a sudden you have room tone, even though you're not speaking yet. So it's a good idea to fade. It's a good idea to fade everything in. The whiskey stink of rot. So if I wanted to, I like that better, by the way. If I wanted to, I can click on this text box. So here's a case where I have to click September tomatoes. And let me decide that this, I have to click on, I want to highlight, whoa. I'm trying to edit the text. Now, the reason this is not working and the reason I can't highlight the text is because I haven't hit the T tool down there. Now I can highlight the text. And let's say I think the white is getting lost down there. So let's say I want to make the text the color of tomatoes. So now I just found red. I could scroll up and down this whole color wheel here and find any color I wanted. But let's say I liked the red, and then I can just pull this anywhere I want within any of these colors. And then I say okay, and now I just turn that red. Yeah. So, yeah, you can play with this. I'm going to leave it there for now. The whiskey stink. What I might just do there, I think I like that color. I think I might just go in and make the text bigger, because I kind of like the contrast of the red of the tomato with the green, all that dying green stuff. So I rounded things up. I faded in at the beginning, and now I just want to make sure I'm doing the same thing at the end. I like how the music faded out, but look, my image just poof. So let me fade out the image. You can see I did it already. I just undid it so I could show you. And now I'm going to let the music fade out with the image. There, that's the end of my project. So now we're ready to export and to share our project with the world, okay? Now, we have to indicate what it is we're going to export. We have to do the in and out thing, only instead of doing it up here in the preview window, we have to do it down here in the timeline, okay? So I might just be able to press the O button, and that might just start. So I pressed O, and I'm going to check and make sure it did that right from the very beginning. And I'm going to make it big. So look at that. That went right to the very beginning. So there we go. We've got our whole project highlighted. All right. And I'm making sure that I have my timeline in the blue box. Right. So we won't be able to export if last place we were was up here. And the next step I'm going to give you will not work if we've been up here. So make sure you're in the timeline. That is highlighted. I still have some stuff over here, but it will not be included because I've only indicated up to that point. Okay, so Controller Command M. and that will open up your media exporter. All right. I'm going to recommend, if these don't come up automatically for you, that the format you choose is H.264, and match source would be fine. Skip comments. Output. Probably actually want to save this to your Google Drive now that I'm thinking about it. So that's probably where I want to save it too. And I have Video Poem on Google Drive. So this is where you want to save it. Aha. You want to save it on your Google Drive where you're working on this poem. So save there. And there you go. Everything else, it should set up automatically. You don't have to worry about any of these other settings. And then you're going to click the export button. And this is going to go pretty fast for me because it's a 1-minute file. So it's going to go, it says a minute, but then it goes up to 1.5 minutes. You see it's going in the opposite direction. If you have a longer, I know some of you are working on longer projects, you might give yourself 10 or 15 minutes with this. Yeah, now we're going down. Now we're going in the right direction. And then you're going to have to email this to me by attaching this file, this Google Drive file, to an email. And the reason I say that is because some people just try to share their Google Drive file with me by, through Google Drive. And my experience, at least lately, is that does not always work. My personal experience, when I've tried to share files with colleagues and friends, they just say, I didn't get it. And vice versa. People have said, did you get what I shared with you from Google Drive? What has worked and never failed to work is just emailing it and attaching your Google Drive file to an email. And that can take a while to upload, but the good news is you can do that from your computer anywhere. You're not dependent on Premiere Pro or a college computer to do that. Okay, that's it. That's the finished work. That's the exporting. That's getting your project so that somebody can watch it without having to be on Premiere Pro. All right. Good luck, have fun finishing up your project, and I really look forward to seeing them. Take care. Bye-bye.